people are joining. I think we can slowly start. Amazing. So I'm sharing the presentation. We will go through the presentation. As I said, I'm really, really excited to talk to you, Christoph, with so much knowledge and experience in the industry. I will also learn in this presentation. Let's start. So we are going to talk about this topic, email marketing decoded from legacy tactics to AI trends. With us, Christoph, the CEO of Expert Sender, with huge amount of experience. I'm excited to learn from you a lot. I'm Daniel. I'm the CEO of Warmy and Anybees, and we are going to talk about interesting topics today. So, Christoph, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Daniel, for having me. It's a pleasure. I think it will be a very interesting topic to cover on. Just a few words about me. I'm the co-founder of Expert Sender, which we started 16 years ago. But myself, I am in the online and email marketing industry for more than 20 years. I will not say how much exactly because I don't want to be too old. I keep it a young spirit, but it's a long time. And I had the pleasure in participating in many industry organizations around the world, starting from US, through Europe, even to China, through Asia. So there was a lot of experience in very different fields because all of them practically have some different approach to email deliverability and how they look at things. So I'll be glad to share my experience a little bit over here and how things were changing.
Thank you, Christoph. I'm Daniel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Warmy and Anybees. Warmy is a deliverability platform. Anybees is a B2B lead generation with AI platform. I'm more than 10 years in marketing, in AI, entrepreneurship. I did many things. I also been in the Shark Tank in Israel, did some crazy stuff. I spent a lot of years in university, and I'm really passionate about email deliverability. And so I think it will be interesting today. But Christoph, before we start, can you tell me why emails? Why you chose email? Why you are excited about emails? And why you want to deliver this passion to other people?
Well, what I think is a perfect way for companies to communicate with their own customers. And it's very cool because it has direct attention, like you're in a cinema, you're interacting with the email yourself. There is no other distractions like banners around you that trying to see what your friends are having for dinner at Instagram and there's banners around you. So the attention is very focused with email. Plus it's asynchronous. So you actually check it out when you want to and when you have the time in the morning or during your work. So it's very nice medium in order to work with. It's both for the marketer and also for the subscriber or the people that is receiving the communication.
Amazing, interesting. Okay, when email was wild. Christoph, you have much more experience than me in emails. Yeah, tell us a bit. Please.
When I was starting, actually, there was no junk or bulk folder at all. So these were really wild, wild west times. The only deliverability limitations were, what was the content like? So if it had any spam words in it or the amount of volume you're sending through an IP address, practically there was nothing else that was being monitored or stopping you from the inbox. So most of the emails were just directly hitting the customer and the response rates were amazing. On the other hand, also when I was starting a long, long time ago, there was little competitors on the market. So there was no 10 brands sending the same shoes, but only one. And usually the early adopters that were starting with email were getting really, really good results when they were doing marketing. Right now, it's more competitive and you have to try more to stand out from the crowd and also be heard, but it's still a very effective medium in terms of result. Plus, it is very important that still the companies own their customers, which is very important in terms of ROI because you're not paying Google or other ones that actually own the customer to reach to them, but you have the power to really do this yourself. So this is something that stayed with email and is still something that generates, I think, the very high ROI that email is still delivering. It has been pronounced dead so many times, but it's still kicking it and obviously delivering value both for the customer and both for the marketing teams. So I think despite being that old medium, it's still doing the trick that it's supposed to do.
Christoph, thank you. And you still believe inside you, I know the answer, but give us something, from bottom of your heart. You still believe companies, marketers can generate revenue from emails? Is still possible with all this deliverability that becomes harder?
I'm not thinking if it's possible. I see the numbers. I can see the customers generating a ton of revenue coming from email. And sometimes they still underappreciate how much it can do for them. Obviously, the new marketers sometimes don't even know the power of email. So So they know Facebook, they know Google. Obviously, this is where they turn their ears. And when we show them, this is how much you can get by building your own database, either if it's email, web push, or even mobile phones to send text messages, all of these mediums are yours. People subscribe to your brand and you can transfer this between providers. It is your data that you can work with. And I totally believe this is definitely something that is bringing ROI to the companies, and I can see a lot of it. And there's a lot of potential that is still underestimated, especially the marketing automation part, which is very direct. This is what marketing automation is delivering, sending you emails with your abandoned cart, obviously, but also looking at what you have been watching, if there are any discounts for the shoes that you had been watching a month ago, for example, to get you back into the sales cycle, or whatever you have saved in your interesting articles list. There's a lot of that can be potentially used, plus all the recommendations, which is all one-to-one email, which is really pushing the envelope further from generic newsletter emails to a really one-to-one communication, which is very beneficial for the end user.
Amazing. I would add a bit that as it becomes more challenging with deliverability, and who will practice and will be better, they will be the successful one. And this is the opportunity, I think, for marketers, CEOs, and companies to master with emails and actually create huge ROI, as Christoph said. Let's move on.
I wanted to show you a little bit of history of how email was developing. And like I said, in the old times, there was no junk folder at the beginning. It was gradually introduced. I also wanted to give you a couple of key moments that were changing the deliverability industry, especially the first one that was a groundwork for identifying who the sender is was SPF. Before that, everybody could send emails as anybody else. I could send an email as Warmy, and that would generally go into the inbox without a problem, or an attacker could do it. So this is why SPF was changing the game, because it was authenticating the sender. And all of the other stuff practically was going from there. Domain keys and DMARC, this is all that kind of were based on the authentication paradigm. Also, launching of Gmail was important. That was in 2004, because they went into the mathematics pretty much from the very beginning. So this is what is shaping the industry right now, is looking at the number of sends, the number of responses, what you're doing with the email, if you're clicking it, if you're deleting it, if you're even reading the email after arriving to the inbox, or if you move it to the archive, and which tab is it in. So all that mathematical data points are being analyzed through Google and right now other engines, and form what is called reputation today. But without the SPF and the authentication mechanism, we wouldn't be able to attach reputation to something. This authentication allows us to have the reputation assigned to the sender, and this is what actually is shaping the email deliverability right now. What people are doing with your email, how they interact with it. Is it interesting for them? This is basically what interests ISPs like Gmail the most, if our email is relevant and interesting for them, because they, as the inbox providers, want to make their users happy. This is what their view at the whole email deliverability thing. And then if the email that you're sending is something that is interesting, then it will go through. Pretty much this is what it's all coming down to in terms of the general approach from Gmail and the likes in terms of email deliverability. And also one thing that I want to touch is GDPR, because it put a final dot on the two views of the user opt-in. Europe is more focused on how the user actually subscribes to the newsletter list. And on the other hand side, we have USA that is kind of looking at if you can opt out from the communication rather than, how you got into the list. So these are completely two different perspectives, and they are still working. So this is something I just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective in how it was changing in time. But we went from no bulk folder to reputation and engagement measurement, which is basically a mathematical artificial intelligence that is solely at the data points rather than human touch, that this one is better or the other one is better, because that's impossible with the number of senders today to comprehend.
Interesting. Samuel is asking, are there any upcoming new standards that will further impact deliverability? Do you know about something, Christoph?
I think most of the things were implemented that were today as industry technical standards. The last one was DMARC, that was introduced as something that was mandatory. It has been around for a couple of years. As you can see, it was introduced in 2012. Right now it has a mandatory implementation, but for the infrastructure related things, I think we are done with closing the authentication part. And right now it's mostly about doing the right job with the reputation and engagement and sending the right stuff to the right people.
Amazing. I want also to who are listening to this webinar, please ask any question. Feel free to ask and use our knowledge and time for yourself. We will be very happy to answer any of your questions. Okay, let's move on.
Yep.
The hiding cost of poor email warm-up. I will be very happy to relate and to explain a bit. Email warm-up and email deliverability, this is what I'm doing for a living, and this is what I'm excited about. And I will tell you why, because the deliverability is a black box. You never know what's going to happen and why, because there is no article you can read and do accordingly, because some of the time it's very, very complicated. And what are you losing when you're not delivering the emails? Obviously, you miss the revenue. Email is not the final goal. I see many people are measuring open rates and stuff like that, which I'm not recommending at all, but this is for another topic. But emails is a tool for you to achieve something, right? You want to promote something, you want people to buy something, you want to increase brand awareness, but emails itself is not the goal. So measuring open rates is irrelevant. Probably you generate revenue from the emails. Poor sender reputation is expensive, and I will tell you exactly what. I want to also to say something. We just came back from a conference in Amsterdam about email deliverability. One of the main things that people said that right now people from the industry is very smart. They said the domain reputation is what right now is giving the highest weight for deliverability. So domain reputation should be very high. This is what they said, and we believe them. So domain reputation, probably you're familiar with Google Postmasters that can show you for Google your deliverability, etc. And then dedicated IP and domain reputation, some of the time is better. If you use shared IP, your other companies that are using the same IP can impact. And warm-up effects called in the warm email campaigns. Warm-up is a continuous process. Maybe it's a bit confusing because warm-up is something you do at the beginning, right? Before you go to the gym, you do some warm-up and then you go to the gym. But this is something you do along the way when you are sending emails, whether you are sending double opt-in emails or you are sending cold emails. When you do positive engagement, and this is what warm-up does. When you do positive engagement on the background, you're actually keeping the reputation. This is what we see with our customers all the time. Just before we started, one of our customer success managers sent a message and she said, we had a customer that warmed up for 1 year, his IPs and domains, and right now the deliverability is skyrocketing. He just made a lot of money just from the first email he sent. So this is something we really recommend doing while you are sending emails. As it becomes harder and harder, this is our responsibility as a tech company to solve it and to be on top of it. Christoph, you want to add something here?
Well, just a little bit of touch on the shared IP and the dedicated IP and the domain reputation. I think that very often customers are kind of lured towards the shared IP space because it obviously gives you a quicker start into deliverability. But on the other, it has a black side where you have the shared IP providers. They need to keep it clean. So also the IP space is as good as the worst bird in the basket. That's why they eliminate some bad actors on a daily basis. Obviously, I would wish anyone to be that one to get deleted, but there is a risk of getting removed from a shared IP space at all times. And something that you work with in terms of the warm-up and your own IP space is that this is yours. The domain reputation that you build is something that you can transfer. You can always add more IPs into that and move them from between providers. And this is something like having your own email list. You own it rather than somebody is owning it. And there's a value in spending a little time and effort on building the reputation on your own. So this is something I just wanted to add to what Daniel was saying.
And this leads me to the question of Samuel that asked another question. He's asking if there is any authoritative sources for domain and IP reputation. How I know that my domain reputation is good, IP reputation is good, or is just a guess?
So we will have a slide on this later on, but in terms of external sources, definitely Google Postmaster is a good way to look at it. There's SNDS from Microsoft as well to look how Microsoft is doing. Yahoo had a system that was giving you some input on their perspective, but as far as I know, it was moved away, then it was going back. At the moment, I'm not able to tell if it's live, but actually we're in the process of checking this out. But as far as I know, we're not successful, but this is the only way you can actually look into what is going on the other side. There's also tools to monitor the inbox deliverability through seeds, but I think it's not very effective considering that, they're only monitoring a couple of emails compared to the massive volume you're sending. So generally, you should be looking at your activities that are coming from your mailing list compared to the sends. But this is something that we'll be touching base on in the next slides.
Christoph, give us some tips that do and don't do an email deliverability in the email in general. Please walk us through.
So basically, like I was saying already, it's important to be engaging in what you're sending. So to appeal to the subscriber, send what they want at the time they want it. So do your best to have individual content as possible and to stand out from the crowd of other marketing messages, because this is something else that also gets you in the right spot. Remember to respect your subscribers, so do not send too much. Probably sending a couple of emails per week is okay, but sending a couple of emails per day is not okay. But generally, to find this okay spot is up to you. You need to look at your positive and negative rates. So on the positive, you have clicks and opens. On the negative, you have unsubscribes and complaints. So if you're pushing it too hard, probably the complaints and the unsubscribes will go up. And then you will know that you're kind of crossing the boundary of bad and wrong. So this is always up to the product you're sending. Some companies send every day or even a couple of days. And this is still cool depending on what you're doing. Fast sales, for example, is obviously sending stuff very often. But if you're selling a fridge, probably is don't buy too often. So you have to work around in the branding emails to keep the brand in mind of your customers rather than hard selling. You can create a branding effect. Also on TV, you don't really sell there actively, but you kind of create this brand awareness, and people have this hook that, when they will think about getting a product that you're advertising, they will remember the brand. And this is something that is huge when the sales moment comes in. So this is a big branding effect from email that you can still use even if you're not selling directly. And also mixing those two together is a great idea to keep the deliverability high, because you can have positive feelings from your brand with sending emails that engage the customer in some quizzes or some kind of activity apart from saying something that can benefit for them, for example. On the other hand, you also use this to sell. What Daniel was already mentioning is that you don't look to opens too much. Obviously, Gmail and Apple are downloading the emails beforehand to give you a proxy, so the marketer doesn't know.
Christoph, how open? Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to ask how open rates work, how to measure open rate. Maybe the people that are listening don't understand what is the technology behind open rates, and then when we will explain, It'll be clear. Yeah.
So basically how an open works is that you have a hidden image in every email. Once you download this image, we know that an email was opened. And right now, Gmail and Apple are pre-downloading the content of images from your email message. And this way, we don't have the access to the direct consumer and the IP they were using to open that email. So in order to do this, they open all of them. If this setting is on the subscriber side. From my perspective, I've been testing it, and the openers are quite reliable, but through this mechanism, you have to be aware that there is some kind of a margin of emails that are opened by the proxy. So you have to keep an account on that. And what is reliable are the clicks and the unsubscribes and the spam complaints, which are directly done by the subscriber. So you have to look at all of the metrics. Like I mentioned before, on the other side, you have AI. This is basically ruthless mathematics machine that is working on the data points that is getting. So what is very important is the volumes and consistency in what you're doing. For example, if you're sending twice a week on Mondays and Fridays, if you will send on Wednesday, that will be breaking the traffic pattern. So something that will most likely get you blocked with the ISP. Also, if you're warming up and you're sending, for example, 5,000 emails to Gmail and you suddenly decide the postmaster reputation is green, so maybe I will just blast additional 100,000 on top of that, and this will also break the traffic pattern, and you have to go back and really pretty much start from scratch. So the time you spend to get up to 5,000 emails per day will be kind of lost. You have to work from scratch. So please be aware that this traffic pattern is broken if you jump from 5,000 to 100,000, for example. Small spikes are okay, but generally you should be keeping it along a certain line that is growing. It can be faster, slower, depending on your business and how people are engaging with your activity, or if you're using additional help like from Warmy, but it still should be something that is kind of consistently going up rather than just having spikes like this that are going up and down, because then you're not creating a pattern and the mathematics will go crazy. Like, what's going on here? I can see that something fishy is going on. So maybe somebody got hacked and the sending account is compromised. So I need to stop the emails, because this is also the way it thinks as it's trying to protect the subscriber's email account. They want to provide a pleasant experience, and anything that is out of the ordinary is considered a risk or a threat by the ISP. Another thing, look at what you're sending. Sometimes we see customers that that have domains blacklisted on some major blacklists, or even not necessarily this has to be in the first level, but sometimes they use trackers or some redirects that are coming from companies that help them with tracking affiliates or tracking revenue. And sometimes those domains are blacklisted. It's not even your fault, but what you should be looking at is if the domain is blacklisted in the stream, because your domain may not be blacklisted, but then it redirects to a blacklisted domain, for example, on Spamhaus, and then your deliverability get compromised, or especially if you're warming up, that will work very badly for the whole process. So you should be using tools that allow you to check this redirect path, like Expert Sender, of course. Shameless plug, sorry. But this is very important to keep your content clean, and especially at the beginning, it's very, very important to really take care of that, because once the reputation is established, there is more room to have mistakes, because that's what it is. At the beginning, you have to really try to be as immaculate and perfect as you can.
Great. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. A lot of interesting things. I also want to ask you a few questions from the audience. There's a question. How would you compare deliverability to inbox placement, and how would you improve the latter? So I think you already answered it, right? So the seeds, and can you tell us a bit, what do you think about when you do placement tests, right? There are a lot of tools doing placement tests, and how we can rely on it when we send our real emails. What do you think about it?
Well, like I mentioned, the inbox placement testing is based on just a little number of emails. So it will not tell you what the global deliverability is at. And especially that, for example, companies like Gmail really use micro machine learning on particular accounts. So what may be delivering to the inbox for Daniel may not be delivering to the inbox for me, because I have other behavior. So again, this is why those little probing tools that check the inbox based on a couple of seeds are not very reliant. So what I recommend is to use your own metrics. I think it's the next slide that has this, so we could dive into that. So basically, for inbox placement, what is the most reliable thing is your own activity. So first of all, the number of sent emails that you should be comparing to total amount of the opens, the clicks, the unsubscribes, and spam complaints. So all those inputs together give you a look how your inbox deliverability looks like. So you compare the activity, so again, opens, clicks, unsubscribe, and spam complaints towards the sent emails. And this will show you what is your inbox placement for your entire brand. This is what I already say in terms of how you can monitor. And this should be consistently checked, like every day or every week, to see if you're going up or down compared to your sending volume. What is also very important is that you should be checking out the activities that pertain to a particular send activity. So for example, if you're sending consistently, like every day, what you'll be seeing will be opens and clicks coming from sends you've done a week before, 2 weeks before. So if you want to have a quick look at the current inbox, you should be looking at the sends and the opens and clicks that are coming from the sends that you've done, like for example, yesterday or 2 days ago, and only look at the opens and clicks that are from those particular emails that you've sent 2 or 3 days ago, to see how your current inbox looks like. Because then you can have a quicker response to a change. For example, if the overall number of opens, clicks drops compared to the volume you're sending. And this will be the fastest method to really look at the inbox. If you can't, then look at the total amount of activities that are coming from your own emails, regardless of when they were sent. But this will also show you how you're doing. And this is something that I consider to be the best way to look at your own inbox reputation. And another tip here is that you should be looking at different ISPs separately. So for example, the activities, so opens, clicks, spam complaints, and unsubscribes from Gmail, from Outlook, from Yahoo, these should be separately, because all of them have separate reputation systems. And sometimes it may happen that, for example, Yahoo is dropping, but Gmail is still high. So your efforts should be focused on Yahoo, for example, to fix your stream. An overall global look is also important, but then you should be looking at particular ISPs to monitor your reputation. And this is the best way to really look at the entire production you're doing, because this is looking at all your subscribers in a particular ISP. This way you can constantly measure how you're doing and see if you're going up or down, or you're good or bad, because once you start monitoring, you will know where your average is. And another thing is that, like I already mentioned, test your content, because it is still working. The spam words and phrases that are catchy for known bad actors are still there. So content monitoring, especially with the domains as well that I mentioned already, is important. So check your links, check your content if it's going through the spam filters correctly, and make sure that you also look at your entire subscriber database and in terms of the legal perspective, because what is important with the legal requirements is that it is the recipient's law that is something that you have to obey. So for example, if you're sending to China, the Chinese law will be reflected to you. And if you're sending to Europe, this will be the GDPR. If you're sending to US, it will be CAN-SPAM. If you're sending to Canada, it will be CASL. So depending on where your audience is, you have to be also aware of the legal challenges that you are facing, because despite you're a company coming, for example, from Germany, you still have to look at the recipient's law when you're doing it. So also that's something that may be affecting deliverability, because the legal mechanisms are also seen from the ISP perspective. Especially for global brands, this is important.
Thank you for that, Christoph. I have a question. How would you test the content? You said, I think this is something that always raising as a question. People asking, okay, how do I know my content is good or bad? So I need to send my newsletter or my email to, I don't know, thousands of people and only then understand. How would you do that?
So first of all, the easiest way is to really have a couple of mailboxes on Outlook, Gmail, Yahoo, send them an email, have a seed list that you're able to check yourself, see if it's going through. And if it's not, then try to play around with the content and see if you get a change. There are also tools on the market that tell you where your potentially problems may be. But if you have the standard ISP set in your database, for example, so that will be Gmail, Yahoo, and Outlook, then going with those three will be enough to get you the 80% of the market covered. So this is where I would start. And this is most reliable content testing that I could recommend.
Great. Amazing. Let's move forward. Before we go to questions and something to remember from this 30 minutes of a webinar, give us the three most important things to remember for our audience to make sure we are improving ourselves tomorrow, what we can do better. Three things to remember.
So if we're talking about warming up IP addresses, I would say that first of all, make sure that you choose the best subscribers you have in order to get this started. So we're talking about openers that you're having, the clickers that you're having, the fresh traffic that you're having. If this is already done, then look at the freshest people from your list. Don't start with people that subscribed 5 years ago, but the ones that subscribed a couple of months ago, if they are not active, but they may be recent subscribers. If you have a list that hasn't been used for quite some time, especially if you have a part of the list that was like 2 years old or something, then I would recommend going for a list hygiene service to get rid of the old email addresses. Because, for example, Spamhaus, one of the ways, apart from honeypots, is that they are recycling old email boxes. So, for example, if you were sending emails to those boxes, they should be removed because of bounces before, and then they reactivate them. So if you're sending to them, practically that means that your processes of list hygiene are not correct, and you should be sending to them. So this is what list hygiene would probably help with, and this is an advice for the older lists for sure. And also very carefully watch at the volume sending plan for each ISP, so you don't break the traffic patterns. Like I said, don't do spikes, don't go up and down with the volume. If you are sending on particular days of the week, then keep it like that, so to let the mathematics learn from you. This is very important, to be consistent and also patient, especially when you're warming up from zero to hero. So you really, the reputation is good. Don't try to jump over the plans that you're getting from your provider or from Warmy, and stick to the plan. And I know it's tempting to send, 4 times as much or 10 times as much, but then it will move you back through the whole process. So this is something I would definitely recommend as a takeout to the warm-up process. And also focus on sending what the people want. So mix the branding emails, the fun emails with marketing to keep the engagement going. So you have everyone opening the emails and, having some good time with them apart from just selling. So adding some effort to engage the customer with your brand, to make them remember your brand, is a good idea at all times, to be simply a bit of fun. And I think that's what I have to say. Goodbye, everyone. Hope you had a good time, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any more questions. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you on the online. And you can hit me up on LinkedIn as well if you have more questions.